Welcome to Building Blocks. Today I'm talking to Tim Armstrong, the CEO and founder of Flowcode. On the show today, we talk about how a single conversation early in his career changed his life forever, how the first few hours of his morning are the keys to his success, and how he follows the rule of 5. Let's start building. Tim, thank you so much for joining me on Building Blocks.
Josh, great to be here in Quad's new space.
New York City, you guys can come by. The concept for Building Blocks for us is to make certain we highlight how people started, their origins, and how they got to where they got to, and then a little bit of future casting. You started off in journalism, and then
yes.
that no one would ever have potentially projected this path.
Right. So
how did you get from journalism to here?
You know, I started in, when I got to college, I started in investment banking, and I was there for about 6 months, and I wasn't good at it, number one. And number two, the guy I was sitting next to was about 100 times better. So I went to my boss after like 6 months, and I'm like, look, I'm here for 2 reasons. One is I think you should promote Murph. Like, he's amazing. And 2 is I think you should fire me. Like, I need to go do something else because this is not my chosen, path. And I had grown up really loving media, and like in high school, when I was supposed to be doing my English homework, I'd be reading business magazines, business biographies. I just loved media and business. And so I decided to start a newspaper in Boston. And that's really, I was both a journalist, I learned how to program. I sold my car, bought a Quadra 650.
Starting off in journalism, starting in media, and your circuitous path to where you are now, everyone asks me this question a lot, like, how do you get to be where you are? Is there a guiding force or a theme that you've always used to help you get from path to path?
When I was doing the newspaper, I didn't know anything about business. So it was like a business boot camp. The woman who printed our newspaper sat me down one day and said, how does this newspaper fit into your goals? And I said, what? She said, well, what are your goals this year? And I said, my goal is to like make the newspaper work. And she's like, no. Come to my house this Saturday. I'm going to sit down with you for 2 or 3 hours and teach you how to do goals. So I went to her house. She taught me how to do goals every year. And since the time I was 22 till now, every Thanksgiving Day weekend, the weekend before Thanksgiving, I sit down and write my goals out for the next year. And that singular conversation with that one woman, I think really had a huge effect. Because one of the things she said to me that day, she said, if you write your goals down, even if you don't look at them, you'll attain 80% of them every year. And of course, I didn't believe her. I said, I'll do it, but it's not going to happen. And the first year I did it, boom, 80 or 90%. Next year, 80 or 90%. And then I got bolder and bolder and bolder about my goals every year. So I have this like library of goals over the last, 25 years. That really changed how I thought about my day-to-day life in context to what I wanted to do in the world. And I would say that's like probably the first building block for me that sort of changed the trajectory of how I thought about what I wanted to learn and what I wanted to do.
So Thanksgiving, so you're feeling thankful, but also reflective, right? And you're setting your goals for the coming year. I like that sort of that touchstone every year to do that.
Yes. I try to teach that to other people, especially young people. We've talked about it at Flowcode in my company. We did a goal setting session on it. So I think it's one of the greatest gifts I got, and it was free and it was 2 hours, but it probably had like a super meaningful impact in my life.
So Murph and this wonderful woman,
yes,
yes, with the shout out, to Murph and the woman,
Mrs. Kennedy,
yes, rocking it. What advice do you give to young people as they're starting out on this journey?
You're going to advise, do this, do that, make money, all those other
plastics, Benjamin.
Yes. Yeah, advice. So it's like I think you got to start with what you're natural. You're competing with everyone in the world,
right?
So if you're not the most interested person in it, you're probably going to lose. And I think part of that, the second piece of advice is a jigsaw puzzle. That you're a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, and your puzzle to be successful has to fit into a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And you have to have other people's puzzles. So like you're only born with a certain amount of sides on your jigsaw puzzle, and some other people out there are perfect fits for you, and they weren't born with your stuff either. So when I notice young people are very competitive, they're like, oh, I need to do everything, or I want to be in charge of that. And the reality is you should be in charge of what you're good at and go hug the people who are in charge of things you're not good at. And the last thing is a concept of average of 5. I don't know if you
heard that.
So average of 5 is like, I say this to my kids all the time, is you're an average of the 5 things I say to you, you eat and you greet, which is like what information you eat and who you greet, who you're around, you become the average of those things. I used to say this all the time, and then someone told me there's like a real average of 5. Someone wrote about sometime.
I think it's you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yes. So I think about that from information and where you spend your time and what you put in your body. I think it's really important that concept is not taught enough to young people, because the reality is most people don't think that way, and then they end up in spots they don't want to be in. My life has improved as my average of 5 has improved. And it's not to be snotty or anything else like that. I hang around with all different types of people and places and all those things. But when I say this to young people, is like, you got to be careful about your average of 5. That's a piece of advice I wish somebody had. I learned it later on. I wish somebody had, when I was 12 years old, sat me down. My parents probably did say that to me, but I didn't get it. But it's I wish I had that at a deeper level younger. So I say that.
And so I think entrepreneurs are different than regular business leaders. I think every business leader is an entrepreneur. I think of myself as more of an intrapreneur. How do you think of yourself as a person who's been so successful at large companies,
right,
as well as smaller companies,
right,
well, the business that you started as well as Flowcode? How do you feel that kind of knowledge and that comfort of risking things has been helpful for you in your career?
Yeah, I think one is the other lesson I learned early in my career, which I didn't know was a lesson, but is risk taking is like building muscles, going to the gym or learning a language. I've always thought about having 2 days for every one day, and a lot of that is the risk taking. So I think that there's a combo of like stretching, and in that stretching, it's almost like every day I usually have 2 days, not one. A lot of big companies don't work that as much the same way. It depends what the culture is. Verizon's like a much bigger operating environment. So that was a combo of like my skill set and background meeting, Verizon, and like some days worked really well and some days, didn't. And that experience for me was like another risk that I took and learned a lot out of it. So I've learned from all the different environments, but risk taking I think is the most,
as an entrepreneurial element.
Anything you do, whether it's in a big company, small company, or in your personal life, I think most people you talk to never say, oh my God, I did everything I wanted to do and I did too much and I took all the risk I want to take and blah, blah, blah. Usually people say they have regrets. And I think one of the things I've tried to do is like I have zero regrets. Like, if I got hit by a cab when I walked outside right now, I'd be like, I did everything I could. I got a limited skill set, limited size brain. I'm like, I just try to do everything I can, and I think that I learned that from risk-taking as a younger person.
I kind of go back to this thought. I kind of love it. The idea of 2 days in one. I'm a big fan of that thought. How do you program your day if you're thinking, I'm going to get 2 days of effort into each day?
So if you want me to go deep on this, I can.
I love this thought. So only because I'm secretly wanting to do it.
All right,
so the whole team is listening, like, oh no, he's not.
I plan every day of my year. When I'm doing the goals, I also go through every single day of the year and basically plan things on every single day that I want to do. The second thing is I plan every day the night before. So I do this thing called time boxing,
right,
where I write down from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, basically what I'm going to do the next day. I usually get up in the morning, I meditate first thing when I get up. And then after I meditate, I usually start a subject matter, and I'll do it for like an hour and a half, which is studying one subject. So by the time I get to work, I've already been an hour and a half on one subject. And I don't just like skim the surface. I go super deep. So by the end of this week, I'll probably have studied 10 companies and 10 things and done reading podcasts. Like I signed up for a university course on it. So like by the time I get into a subject, I'm like insanely deep on it. So when we have meetings at work, I'm not showing up being like, hey, we should improve our go-to-market. I'm like, hey, here's how 7 different companies do it. Here's the research on it. Here are the things I read and I saw and things like that. So for me, that time period in the morning, by the time I get to work, I've already done probably more than other people in my position who are supposed to be improving their companies have done before 8 a.m.
Wow.
And then during the day, I try to do things during the day that will give me the experiences. So I usually go to the gym and then go for a walk every day in New York. And while I'm walking, I'm taking scans of QR codes, looking at the pages and stuff. By the time I go to bed at night, I feel like I probably have accomplished twice as much as I would have if I just had a normal day.
Just amazing. And what a rigorous process that I am inspired by. But you mentioned teams, so I want to go there. You've created such wonderful people around you at your different organizations that I've had the benefit of being exposed to. How do you find excellence in making, and bringing excellence to the teams that you work with?
I learned a lot of lessons playing sports growing up. When I was in high school, I was on a very successful basketball team, sophomore, junior, and senior year. But my sophomore year, I didn't play that much. And I realized that being on a team doesn't always mean you're the star player taking all the shots. You can have just as much fun if you're on a incredibly good team with people who like each other and have trust. And I've tried to translate into that to the business world. And at Flowcode, Christy Decker's here, who's been here at the company since day one, is we have the first saying at the company is the product is the team and the team is the product. We tend to hire people that care about team. And if you care about a team, you also care about the customers. And I think that's a big difference. At the end of every interview I do, I tell people, I said, if you're not super curious and you don't like to work on a team, I'm like, do not come here.
You will hate it, right?
Yeah, I say, by the way, you'll hate it, we'll hate it, everyone will hate it. But go home tonight, and if you don't celebrate other people's wins as much as you celebrate yourself, you're not gonna like it here.
Well, I gotta say, it's inspiring what you're talking about as a sort of a framing back to the concept of the show about the things that have made people successful. Hearing about your regimented process and the team orientation, it's awesome to hear. I do sometimes joke about marketing being a Sisyphean task, like a workout. You have to get into it and should dig in. You're like, oh my God, it's going to happen. And I wonder about the feeling sometimes that it's the same thing. We're doing it again, and it's the same thing. How do you agree that this can be Sisyphean, or do you feel like there's an objective that you're reaching for?
I don't think you ever reach the top of the mountain. But I'll tell you, when we were getting ready for the interview, I was listening to you talk to your team here. And I think one of the things that really good marketers have, which you have, is a high motor. And
that is true.
And your motor brings electricity to the other people you work with. Because when you're in marketing, it's not you just pushing up the hill. You have product people, engineers, customers you're trying to deliver to. Everyone's on that hill with you, and you usually have a team behind you or in front of you trying to push as well. And I think being a key marketer means you in many cases you have to have the highest motor. And listening to you prepping for this, I've known you for a long time, but your motor is infectious. Listening to it is. I'm telling you, I think that's a unique asset in marketing, which is the world doesn't move until someone moves it. Yeah. And if you don't have the motor, you have to have a great motor to be a great marketer, period.
Maybe it's not Sisyphean. Maybe it's just an endless, we as marketers choose to be on a hill that's on an incline. Yeah. Because if it were just flat, it was boring.
Yes. You'd be bored
I'd be bored.
Yes.
But having a hill, no, and we're always pushing up the hill. And I really do like that feeling of even though it's still more to go on the hill, I'm but look how far we've got.
Yes.
Look how far.
Yes.
I want to talk about Flowcode. 3/4 of the top Fortune 1000 are using Flowcode as an activation. Tell me, what is the reason why so many people are using Flowcodes right now? Is there a specific benefit for Flowcode?
Yeah. So one is, if I said, look, you have a customer and they have a phone and they love that phone. As a marketer, you would target the human and the phone, not just the human.
Right.
But most people, because of marketing's been on for a long time, think about targeting the human only. They don't think about targeting what the human has with them that they love.
Right.
And I think that's number one. Number two is, for a brand, pretty much in almost every environment you're in, somebody else either does or could own your customer relationship. You should be incentivized as a brand to be as close to your end consumer as humanly possible. And there's no faster, better way to be direct one-on-one than through their phone, directly on their screen, with an intentional action. So that's why people love it. And the third thing is the offline world. So many brands have big investments in offline.
Right.
And if you went to them and said, oh, you invest in a website, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I have a website. And I said, I'm going to strip all the data out of it. Anyone who visits, I'm not going to let you know who they are.
Right.
You're not going to be able to retarget them. You're not going to be able to do anything on the behavioral side on the website. how much fun would the website be? They were like, I would never have a website if I couldn't do all those things. And it's like, yeah, but you're running a retail store or you're running a sports event and you have all those humans coming to your offline website and you don't do anything with them.
Right.
Don't know who they are, don't use their data, don't make them offers. So like there's an entire pool of the economy, which is 85% of the economy is offline. And that's why people are interested in Flowcode, because we take the offline world as seriously as most people take the online world.
Which is why Quad is such a good and important relationship with Flowcode, because of the assets that we have created historically, which are manufacturing and print and catalog and direct mail, that allows for that data to be shared. And that's obviously the crux of the new point.
Well, we met with Joel and we stayed at the Quad guest house, which is amazing. Which is amazing.
Yeah.
There's certain people we've met with who have got things instantaneously. Joel is in the top 1% of people that we told Flowcode about, and this is before we had scaled.
Right.
He got it right away because I think Quad as a company has one of the most powerful and differentiated avenues for direct-to-consumer in the world to consumers, which is direct to the consumer and directly in their home. Quad understood what the dynamic of how powerful the offline world connected with digital and connected with data could be for brands. And so it was like, it was an incredible 2-day period at Quad, and we've ended up from that time period to be incredibly large partners together.
I got to tell you, Tim, I do a lot of chats with people, and I always get something from it. But this particular conversation with you, I've learned, I would say 5 separate things that I'm going to try to think about how I bring that into my day. Just think about building blocks as a theme. What a wonderful first guest for us to have as an inspiring person for me, but also as a partner to Quad. I can't thank you enough.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this, by the way. I think also that you're taking your time out of what you normally have to do this, and hopefully I've gotten so much help from other people. I hope if it helps, great. If it doesn't help, put it in the trash. But thanks for doing this.
I love it. Thank you.